Hello, hello, hello. Hello, hello, hello. Good afternoon, good evening. Go ahead and tap the screen. Share the live out. Please and thank you. We're going to get started soon enough. This is an info session for Hillman talk, if you're familiar with that trend right now with Dr. Barlow. Educated Black women on this app are jumping in and educating, so naturally I have lots of infrastructure already, so I'll be teaching an intro to holistic medicine course right here on whatever platform you're streaming me on, whether this is TikTok, IG, LinkedIn, YouTube, Book a Face, wherever. Eventually I'll have to figure it all out. I do have a fan base. All of my business stuff is all very intricate, so we'll get started shortly. Thank you for being patient with me. Awesome. You guys can continue to tap the screen. I have to change over this this visual aid that I have because it is not allowing me to show you what I need to show you. So I'm going to then just create something new for you guys, and just give me a few minutes to do that because it won't take me that long. Actually, it'll take me like just a couple seconds. It should be good. Tap the screen. Blessed High Rising, Jay. Thank you so much for joining. I so appreciate you as I get my life together over here with the visuals. It's a lot going on to make sure everybody has what they need so they can see the things. All right, I'm just getting this in here. This should be pretty good. Here we go. Just give me a few more minutes as I get all of these things worked out. Thank you for tapping the screen. Thank you for sharing the live. Hi, Brian. I have really nothing to say to you. I don't know why you're in the live. I guess it's because somebody came in because I was using conscious communication. That's the only reason I would think you would come into my live. Let's see. Bear with me as I finish getting the rest of this worked out. Dun, 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 dun. All right. I think I've got, hello, Bubbly. Thank you for coming in. Thank you for coming in. We're going to get started in just a few moments. Thank you for being very, very patient with me as I get all of these things all organized. Let's see. You know what? I think I'm just gonna do it like that. Actually, that will look so much better. All right. You just give me just a few moments. Course completion. Okay. Yeah, I already have that one. Let me get that one. Let's see. Course requirements, certificate of completion. There's the intro. I think that should be all of them. Let's see. Let's see. I think that's where I ended the rest of it. Okay. Sweet. Alright, I think I'm good now. Hey, Tatted Kisses. Good to see you. So good to see you. Alright, I think I've got my life together now. Alright, so it's going to be super, super small. My apologies. So, but just listen in. I had to kind of do this on the fly because it wouldn't take the other format that I had. So bear with me as we have technical difficulties, but we'll work it out as we always do. Let me see. Now I'm gonna do. Alright. I keep telling myself one of these days I'm gonna organize all the files. And I do sometimes, and then they get all crazy again. Such an interesting component. Alright, here we go. Give me just a moment while I fix this. Hold on. Here we go. Alright, and bear with me because, again, it's on the fly. Let me hold on. Alright, let me see if I can get that to show up. Let's see. Yeah, I think there they are. Let's do auto. Yep, manual, use hotkeys. Alright. Yeah, it should load up now. Hold on. Hopefully it loads shortly. Give me a moment. I may have to restart it. Yeah, I may have to restart because it may not play because I didn't set it. Although it should allow me to do that in the middle of it. Hold on. All right, so first off is I'm just going to talk to you for a split second and tell you what we're kind of talking about. Okay, hello everyone. All right, let me do this one. Actually, I like this one a little bit better. Okay, so hello everyone. Welcome in, welcome in. My name is Dr. Erica Steele. I am a board-certified naturopathic doctor, blah, blah, blah. Lots of education. But why I even bring all of this up and why I'm doing this live stream today is there's a trend on TikTok with Dr. Barlow. Dr. Barlow is a African American Studies professor, and she posted, innocently enough, on TikTok a video for her class, right? And of course, it's gone viral, and now people are actually taking her class. But people, educated Black people like me, lots of women, naturally are now on the trend, and we are creating our own classes. So definitely hashtag Hillman Talk and check out what's happening and all the different classes. I've seen a really good lineup from like finance to screenwriting to all different I saw a sign language one, so Spanish. There's lots of just amazingly incredible educated women. So while we're relaxing as the 92%, so we're relaxed on the 92%, we're creating and we're building and we're growing and evolving and all of the things. So I'm going to try to see if I can get these slides. It's hashtag Hillman Talk. If you look at my last video that I posted, all the hashtags that they're using, I just used. And so they have all, then if you search the hashtags, like people are putting like lots of videos and stuff out there of what they're teaching. They'll have their syllabus and all the, yeah. And there's one like edible herbs or edible wild plants of North America. It was like, yeah, there's some pretty incredibly talented and educated women out there. So since this kind of already is my wheelhouse, I wanted to do an intro to holistic medicine. And so it's really, it's geared, it's a higher level course. It's definitely not, easy level. If you're just looking to kind of do it more as a personal thing, that's why we have the Wellness Collective, which I'll talk about. But this is designed more for students that either are they don't have to have a bachelor's, but definitely that level of rigor, just because this particular practice is very complex. I know that we love to reductive thinking and we want it all down into these little easy, manageable, bite-sized parts, but unfortunately the body is extremely complex, and so we have to understand how the body actually functions in order to be able to treat the body. So we do that through various different ways in holistic medicine. So I just want to kind of talk you through, and then I'll go through. Yes, exactly, I am recording them, so they will be available on my YouTube primarily, but they're on all streaming platforms, but I think each one has a different dynamic. Like TikTok, they will save them, but they, you can't like rewatch them unless you post them, and then they have a 10-minute length. So for more long form content, that's where you would go on YouTube. All my lives are actually on there already, and I'm gonna organize them a little bit better with playlists and things. And then I have a link in my bio as well for a free community where it does pop up when I go live and that kind of thing. And there's discussions, lots of free resources, even the health tracking app that you can download again for free and utilize. So lots of different ways to access, the healthcare. So really it's about, education. Like that is the biggest thing. So I have a lot of education, and the reason that I have so many different types of education is because each one of those educations brings different perspectives. So I just want to kind of go over that perspective first and foremost, like why I chose what I chose, why I chose the schools that I chose, that kind of thinking, that mindset, so you can kind of understand, what I was doing. So I've been in this field for over 20 years. So I left my home at 16 years old. I was advanced studies diploma, but unfortunately, I just had enough. I had had a really tumultuous life up until that point. So my mother was very ill, and so for me, it was like it wasn't worth it anymore. I just didn't want to fit in the boxes. I, had been in gifted and all the accelerated whatever since I was in first grade. And so the pressures of having to perform and all of that with my like total awakening rebellion, whatever you want to call it, was just too much to bear. So I left, and I enrolled myself into massage school. Now the reason I chose massage school was because not only did I grow up around a lot of really brilliant people. My mother was a cancer researcher for NIH. She's a social worker now for the VA, so still functional, even though my father is in education, so multi-degree. They both were Marines. So I grew up around a lot of, my stepdad was an electrical and a nuclear engineer. So, I grew up with a lot of really brilliant people around me. So I was very privileged in that and very grateful of those experiences, growing up with Encyclopedia Britannica and having to look everything up because nobody will tell you anything, and the Dewey Decimal System, and going to the library, and all of those kind of old school ways that we learned. Even when I first became a doctor, we still did everything paper, everything manual. We wrote out our lab reports. We would manually type these long lab reports. So I'm really grateful to have been unfortunately kind of one of the last, if you will, refuge of really having an art and having a practice. When I even became a massage therapist, and I worked in so many different capacities in massage therapy. I worked in, healing centers and wellness centers, and I worked with chiropractors, and I worked with pain specialists, and I worked with athletes, and all different types of athletes, professional, whatever. I did a lot of sports manual work and physical, more like physical therapy kind of manual therapy work. I got into teaching through that. So I taught anatomy, physiology, kinesiology, and some of my students back in the day are actually floating around this app. So, you'll be able to kind of interact with some of them. So I've been in this field for a long time. So as I was, graduating out of that, that's when 9/11 happened. So that's how long I've been in the field. And I really just took every opportunity. I opened my first company at 17 with a whole bunch of chiropractors, but it turned out to be a hustle. So I've done it all in terms of like the healthcare business. I owned a very successful holistic wellness center. I owned a holistic family practice, a brick and mortar family, like literally like what you would think a primary care would be, but only totally holistic. Because I wanted to create a business or create a practice that I would take my daughter to. And so I have a lot of experience in the field, not just from the clinical side, but from the business aspect of it as well, which is really important if you want to create sustainability. So I really want to focus first on the clinical side, and then we'll kind of jump into, and feel free to ask any questions. So first things first with the clinical side, right? So I started off in psychology, so I have an AS in psychology. So I started going to psych personally. My mom had a psych break when I was really young, so I was like 8. So we were required to go to counseling as part of it, but we were also required to do our cultural healing practices as well. So like we grew up doing all of our Afro-Indigenous practices and, chanting and, all the clearing our energy and spiritual cleanses and all the things. I'm not going to go over all of them, but we did a lot. And also too, like we were exposed to acupuncture, and we were Reiki attuned, and we were also exposed to a lot of other different cultures too. Buddhism. I grew up in a Hasidic community. Then I helped all the women with the high holidays. I ended up, learning a lot about Judaism, studied the Kabbalah for 5 years, traveled with that. I really studied a lot of Hinduism with yoga, different types of yoga, Iyengar yoga, Hatha yoga, also Kundalini yoga, which is my preference. I also did a lot of mind body training. So even though when I got my AS in psych, I said, I feel like I need to do work on me before I'm helping anybody else. So I took a step back from psychology at that point. I did the Psych 101, Psych 102, developmental psych. I got enough psych under me to go, yeah, I need to take a step back, physician heal thyself, right? And so that's when I backed up, and then I changed it to natural healthcare sciences, which moved me more into kind of laboratory specialty and laboratory diagnostics. So when I get into laboratory diagnostics, so there's several different layers of laboratory diagnostics. So there's what we call like remote patient monitoring, right? That's one layer of diagnostic. And that's where like a patient takes their own specimens. Like they're going to take their pH, or they're going to take their temperatures, or they're going to take their heart rate. So we're trained to evaluate cross-section, all of that data for a patient. But then also we look at your basic biochemistry, right? And I guess I should have flipped it. Let me reorganize it for you so it makes a little bit more sense. Okay, so you are a human being, okay? And so on a basic level, right, we're just a whole bunch of protons, electrons, and neutrons, right, that are, bonded together, through this vital force life energy called life, right? So that's a bioenergetic frequency, right? So that's what creates our, amazement as human beings, right? And so that's part of our consciousness, right? So that can actually be measured, right? So we can measure subjectively, meaning how the person feels. We can take questionnaires about how they feel to be able to evaluate that. But we can also take bioenergetic assessments, meaning like we can look at a person's biofield and see where they're emotionally stuck. We can, even if they're not consciously aware of it, we can see if there's entity attachments within their auras and things like that, congestion of energy, holding on, to resentments, all kinds of things. We can also individually test for dormant emotions or unconscious emotions. So there's all the, again, questionnaires, what the person's consciously aware of, and then what we can test for. So that's the bioenergetic level. Bioenergetic frequency, just so you know, is much more sensitive than your biochemical. That's why we use it. So meaning people don't understand that your body actually has to have enough energy in order to express that, information in your lab test. And so when the person, let's say, is really nutrient depleted, they don't have enough energy to be able to produce the information that we need. If they're like if they have chemical sensitivity overload, or multiple years of mold exposure, or multi-organ system organ involvement, their bodies are really depleted. And so it's a way for us to be able to test the patient without having to use, your traditional blood lab data. Applied kinesiology is also one of those two. I did probably like 1 or 2 courses in applied kines. I really wasn't my vibe. I also did some coursework in nutrition response testing. Again, it wasn't my vibe. It was too supplement heavy for me. I'm not a big, I don't believe in, I use supplements as medicine. I don't use it like we're going to now be dependent upon supplements, and now we're going to be taking buckets of supplements. Ironically, I don't even like taking supplements. I take them because they've jacked up our food supply. So I digress. So bioenergetic frequency is the most sensitive. Then from there, we use biochemical, so, or excuse me, genetic, right? Excuse me. So there's two ways to look at genetics. There's the actual genes, right, that are immovable. So like if you have a COMT gene, for instance, COMT is more on the like dementia, Parkinson's, those kinds of spectrums, right? So in more of like your standard genetics, they say, oh, you have the gene, there's nothing you can do, deal with it, right? And there was this concept that you were a victim to your genes, right? But we know because of the work of Dr. Bruce Lipton and epigenetics, we know that it's not that case anymore. It's less than 20%. Most of it now is epigenetics, the environment to which we put the genes in. So we look at not only genetic markers, but we look at what we call methyl genetic markers. So all those proteins that keep those genes are running and keep all the chemical processes in your body running. So think about that as like the foundation. So like if the bioenergetics was like your land, right, that you have, that you own, your genetics is going to be the foundation of your house. So there's going to be sections in the foundation of the house that may, let's say, be cracked or maybe, broken, but, and we can't, it's not like we can fix them per se, but we can stabilize them, right? So how this works is, let's say you have nitric oxide uncoupling issues. Nitric oxide uncoupling issues is going to drive drive nitric oxide depletions and also drive arginine depletions. And so your blood pressure is going to go up because you're deficient in arginine and you're deficient in nitric oxide. So, but you would be diagnosed as having hypertension, right? Not knowing that. So that's kind of how the genes work. It gives us a window in. I don't always have to take genetic data. I can also assess full range genetic data, not just, the little reports or whatever they give you on 23andMe. Like I can take the raw file, process that out, and tell you anything you want to know about your genes, and not from a reactive, fear-based, oh my God perspective, but from a, okay, you've got this going on, you've got that going on. And that's actually how I determined with myself that there was damage to my DNA, because naturally, a little bit about my ancestral trauma and how I even got here, right, is that with my mother's line, the genocides and the impact of slavery hit that family line so painfully, that there was a lot of mental health issues, really going back to my great grandmother, then my grandmother, and then my mother, right? So I'm like, my sister, she's good, but then I'm like next in line, and I very much resemble, favor, very much like my mother. And so it's kind of like, oh my God, what's going to happen? So my life has always really been trying to get to this root cause to make sure. So really you've been along on the journey of me healing myself, right? And I've built a career off of it because naturally I've helped on healing myself, and then I can help other people. And that's really what I teach. You have to be a practitioner first. I don't believe in not being integrated and not actually practicing these things, which is why I really like to have people start off with more so kind of that they're a patient mindset and they're treating themselves and they're experimenting and learning more so that you can really solidify the information. Even when we went through a lot of lab, all the lab training, which I haven't even gone into yet. Even with all the lab training, we have to do these lab reports on ourselves. And so the more that you do these reportings and the more that you start to understand your health data, now the more you can make educated and informed decisions, because the conventional medical system doesn't know. They're not trained. That's just not what they do, which is why I couldn't be a conventional doctor. Okay. So genetics. We also use genetics for, there's something called pharmacogenetic testing. So pharmacogenetic testing is in the event that you need to be on a pharmaceutical, you want to make sure that that medication is genetically matched to you, meaning it's not going to make you sicker. So that's where we would use pharmacogenetic testing, most popular in more of the psych world, simply because they rampantly prescribe insane. So I won't go into a long diatribe about that right now. I'm sure we'll get into it later on. But, so we use it a lot in that just to kind of make heads or tails medications, but it can be used really cross specialty, quite honestly. And they're using it more and more and more in terms of for, let's say, cancer treatments and things like that, because now they're doing more genetically targeted treatments, which can definitely help in a lot of ways. It's not really root cause treatment, it's more, diagnose and manage model. So, yeah, there is definitely a distinction. And so that's also why we kind of have to take this slow, because we have to educate people, because most people are trained in very reactive germ theory, right? They're trained in there's these evil germs out here and I've got to eradicate them and all the things, where not really paying attention to their personal environment. So people are neglecting their own personal environment and then scared that there's some, boogeyman. And I'm not saying that there's not viruses. I'm not saying that there's not pathogens that exist. Clearly there are, but there's also a lot of toxicity, right, there that goes unchecked, unnoticed, ignored. And with the new environmental deregulations, I'm very much concerned that thought process will continue, especially with withdrawal from Paris climate change initiatives, and also to the World Health Organization. So not having at least more macro data. The good news is we take our own data. So when COVID happened and all of that, doctors like me were straight, because we took so much data at that time. I could run reports on patients and actually see who was cardiometabolically at risk and who was immune system at risk, and I could actually cross-reference that. And so we were able to call all of those patients, get them on preventative pack, get them education rapidly. We didn't lose patients. In fact, the opposite. We got flooded with people, even phone calls from the emergency rooms and things like that. Doctors like me, we pretty much become the cleanup crew of medicine. When patients are gaslit, they're injured, they're ignored, those patients don't stop seeking care. Like, those patients still press forward. They get in Facebook groups, they read books, they watch YouTube videos. Patients are at a point where they're not getting the answers because the healthcare system has been failing us. So okay, I know I'm like super long-winded with my education. All right, so whereas like bachelor's of natural healthcare sciences, that's all of the laboratory, right? I specifically chose a school that is not under the American Naturopathic Medical Association umbrella, because they want to be they want to prescribe pharmaceuticals. They want to do surgery. They want to be like they want to be like primary care doctors. And unfortunately, they're not adequately trained naturopaths, and they're not adequately trained conventional doctors. So they're like this hybrid doctor. And so it's two different philosophies. And so anyway, our profession is split in half. And so my side legislates against their side. Their side often wins because they're better funded, and it's just this back and forth fiasco. Um, so there's a lot of trying to hold on to our indigenous practices and trying to hold on to natural medicine has literally led me into political fights, and political posturing and lobbying and bill writing and all sorts of business, because hey, wireless, because really our rights to have informed consent, have agency over our bodies, choose what we want to do with our bodies is literally at risk. The 14th Amendment, I know, is totally politicized as though it is just for AB, but in fact, the 14th Amendment protects doctor-patient privacy. It really provides that, just sanctity and that trust that really needs to happen between a doctor and a patient. I will tell you that over the years again, I was in family practice for almost 15 years. I was also a practice that hit a Groupon wave, and that's why I saw so many people. And when I tell you, leaving California, Southern California, to go to Virginia, it was like I crash landed in the desert of natural medicine. And when I crash landed, like, it was just like a whole bunch of like zombies that were just starving, hey souls, for what I had to offer. So I was bombarded. Like, my practice within a year, it exploded. I was on television, it exploded me on television. It exploded me into so many different directions. I was so, so grateful. And I really trained with a lot of the OGs who have now really passed on. Those older YT men, my profession, really, there's not a lot of people that look like me. They just don't and look like us, right? We're very few and far between. The higher up we get, the more sparse it becomes. And so, because of proximity, I was able to have the privilege of really training under some amazing doctors over the years. Dr. Walden, Dr. Oh my gosh, my brain is like going blank, of course. At the time, all kinds of doctors. I've got tons of them that I've got in my brain. Dr. Chuck Parker, Dr. Titus Parker, all the OGs that open up their heart. Dr. Korniak, I think his last name was. Just so many different doctors over the years that open their practices to me and train me, because I was so young. I was so young, and I was really intelligent, really brilliant. They knew that, and they saw something, and they really helped me to get to different places. So I was really happy about that. But there was a huge need, and there's especially a huge need for Black, brown, indigenous people, and also just people that don't necessarily believe in the conventional medical model. So my practice was then just bombarded with lots and lots of people, even from like the western part of the state, and people that just, literally drop babies and then like bring them in. So it was all pretty wild. Hey, thank you guys so much. And so I would say also, so going back to the natural healthcare sciences, so that taught me like the baseline. It taught me about regions. It taught me how to build my own lab. It taught me how, all of the nuance to doing at-home testing, there's a specific grading for it, more of your low grade lab tests. There's different grades of lab tests. So anyway, so that was really what that taught me. And then I did a bachelor's in alternative medicine, and that bachelor's really taught me all the modalities. Now, remember, I grew up doing this work with my mother, so Reiki attunements, acupuncture, rebirthing, all kinds of different modalities, sweat lodges, vision quests, dances, Turtle Woman Dreamers groups, all sorts of things. So that was just a part of our upbringing. So, and then I went to massage school, so we had all those modalities. So by the time I got to that bachelor's, really it was like just kind of repeat, but it did teach a little bit more about structures. So it taught more about like the Eastern structures of like Ayurveda and naturally acupuncture, which have similar, but they're on their own system. Acupuncture uses more of the meridian system, more of the bioenergetic system, where Ayurveda is going to use more of the doshas, and that's kind of how they, manage their system. We're under the Western-based system, where anatomy, physiology, pathology, kinesiology, all of the physical sciences, and then we break it down into anatomy, which is your structure, and physiology, which is your function. A lot of times in conventional medicine, they're focused on the structures, right? They're not focused on the function. So as long as the structures, there's no tumors, there's no physical structures, the specimen is quote unquote fine, and then the functional issues, they pretty much medicate you for that. But we know, if you're driving your car and you keep putting sugar in the gas tank, eventually that car is going to break down. And so I hate to dehumanize us that in that manner, but just to kind of think about how we manage. Some of us manage our cars better than we do our bodies, right? And we take our bodies for granted, and our bodies break down. Any given moment, we're either building health or building disease, right? So one's the sciences, one's the modality, right? And then from there, I went into my doctorate programs. I have a doctorate in natural medicine, and so that again is more of extensions. I focus mainly on homeopathy, which is low frequency medicine, and we do herbology and all of that. But really, it was homeopathy and compounding were my main focuses, and I was really fascinated with psychoneuroimmunology, which is the emotional manifestations of disease and how our thoughts and emotions manifest physical reactions and physical symptoms within the body. So I did a lot of focus in that particular area. And then I have a doctorate in naturopathy. And with that doctorate, I really focused in on laboratory diagnostics. So that taught me into your basic biochemistry. So what you would have, like your basic blood labs, you're going to have like your CMP, which is kidney liver function, CBC, which is expanded immune system, CBC with differential, lipid, which again, liver function, but also cardiovascular risk, homocysteine, which is detoxification ability, various different markers, what they all mean, the highs and lows. There's two different ranges we use. So we look at your reference range because those are diagnosable ranges. We need to know those if we need to refer a patient or work integratively. But then we look at your optimal ranges because we want to make sure that your body's optimally functioning. So we're like the biohackers of the world, pretty much. I know all you see is the podcast bros. All you see is Joe Rogan and whatever, right? But there's actually doctors who spent a lot more time in front of patients than behind podcasting equipment, learning actually what some of the stuff that they try to sell to you, right? In the little like step 1, 2, 3 ABCs that they try to sell you, they're actual people that do the work and walk their patients in. So anywho, so that was all laboratory. So we look at different levels of labs. Different specimens are going to yield different results. So for instance, if you are, wanting to test your hormones, like a lot of people want to test your hormones, they feel off, right? Testing your hormones in blood labs is only going to test if you're on a synthetic medication. It only is there to monitor that, right? If you want to see what your actual hormone levels are, you need saliva, which is more accurate, and hair is the most accurate, right? Most of those specimens are done at specialty labs. They're not done at your standard LabCorp labs. Your conventional doctor, most of them don't know that those labs exist. They're not trained in them. They don't see a distinction in them. It's just not part of their thing. So they miss a lot of things because of inaccurate information. How can you base any sort of scientific method if you don't have the proper information? So for me, having data, and once I learned that you could test all these things and you could see, what the body was doing in the health state, and you could treat the body, and then you could see, after the fact, what you were doing, you could hold yourself accountable to that. I was like, yeah, there's no way I could go and be a medical doctor. Not that there's anything against that. We need reactive care. We need acute care for certain things. But in chronic disease and actually complex conditions, it really fails us and is currently failing us, with chronic illness really being the highest, issue that we're having, heart disease, all preventable, lifestyle modifiable factors, because that's just not a part of conventional practice, is teaching you how to prevent. It's the same old classic, lose weight, drink water, move your body, eat healthy. There's really, or they give you, some generalized, food plan with no real science behind it. So again, we track everything. We get all the data on it because, we say if it doesn't exist if we don't track, right? And then if we don't understand what the data means, we can't make changes, right? Which means that the patients aren't being provided full informed consent because they're not being given all of the information to actually make that decision. So from those doctorate degrees, I did a 2-year postdoc in functional medicine and integrative medicine. So again, I went super deep into the labs to be able to stack bioenergetic, genetic, and methyl biochemistry, basic and advanced, all and remote patient monitoring. So, like when you talk about data, I can honestly say that the amount of data and the amount of exposure that patients have with me in terms of actually being seen for the first time is sometimes really scary for patients. I'm not even going to water it down. Some patients, they get very upset when I go over their labs. or when I go over all their data, they get overwhelmed, they get afraid, they break down crying. There's lots of different reactions, because if you think about it, if you've been operating in a current institution that you have trusted for years and years and years, that's continuing to betray you again and again and again, but also still communicating their own superiority and their own confirmation bias, right? And you've been locked and loaded into this system again and again and again, and you're realizing all this resistance. You're realizing, hey, wait a second, this wasn't crazy. I really did have this condition or that condition, or there was something going on. And when you finally, I'm usually the last doctor that people see, right? They've been through every doctor underneath the sun. They've seen this person, that person. By the time they get to me, they're just over doctors. I probably hear I don't trust doctors multiple times a day. I've been cussed out more times than you can even. That's why on these panels I'm like, yeah, just another day at Disneyland. Simply because, thank you, Kron, simply because I'm used to emotional reactions and emotional triggers. So when people have those experiences, right, they're pretty big, and so we look at that data, and then from that data we make decisions, right? And so I can stack all of that data. So and then the integrative medicine training taught me really a lot about how conventional medicine sees the body and treats the body. So when I refer patients, I'm not just referring them generally speaking. I'm actually referring them, with their proper data that they need, organized, faxed over, because I can do EKGs, ECGs completely remote, right? So if I have a patient that I suspect, let's say a heart murmur or, PVC or something, right, we can detect that, send it in a file to a cardiologist that's, in their local area or whatever, to be able to assist them with their full record report. So I noticed with the healthcare background, which this gets me into my MPH. So it literally became a doctor right around the ACH started, ACA, the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. So I kind of saw like, whoa, like what's about to happen to my profession? Like this is crazy, right? And the government, overregulation, it was a lot. So I decided at the time, okay, you know what? It's just another year. Let me go ahead and get my MPH, my master's in public health, with an emphasis in concentration in complementary alternative medicine, but specifically for legislation purposes, just in case, like just so I have it in my back pocket, right? Oh my gosh. Sure enough, I'm glad I had it in my back pocket, because later on, many years later, I found myself doing, good morning, I found myself doing a lot of legislation work, a lot of lobbying, and even to the point of bill writing. And, it was a lot, and so I've seen a lot in the political space. I can tell you, I will not be back. I will contribute my voice and education in other ways. Hey, Bria, but, in terms of there are so many special interests, you couldn't even get a parking space without, somebody buying you off. So I just, the whole system has to come crashing down. Unfortunately, I know that's not what people want to hear, because again, we're holding on to the system, right? We're holding on to it. We're like, no, we know it's not working. It's like a dysfunctional partner, right? We keep coming back. We know it's going to be horrible. We know they gaslight us. We know they try to control us, make us feel bad, make us feel horrible, this coercive control, right? But at the end of the day, they're good and bad. And I'm just going to say it, because it gets people caught up it's like that one thing that people cannot let go of. And it's the same thing with this healthcare system. It is this perpetuating of, I keep going back. I know that this isn't working. I know this is harming me, but I in my mind am powerless and having a choice. So by the time they get to me, I'm dismantling iatrogenics, which is medical trauma, institutional trauma, betrayal trauma, confirmation bias. I mean, you name it. I am working diligently to dismantle all of those different concepts. So
And that also drove me into a lot more of the mind body, so neurolinguistic programming, conscious language communication, but also clinical hypnotherapy. I did that training with HMI. They're out of LA. And so that's a year-long training, and they really get super, super deep into conscious mind, subconscious mind, and really have to shift behavior, right? Because at the end of the day, nobody's going to come and save any of us. We have to save ourselves. In every given moment, we're either building health or building disease, and it really just depends what we're choosing at that moment. And so getting people out of that, very high level Rockefeller reactive thinking that we're all indoctrinated in, that quick fix germ theory, reductive, this equals that, with no real understanding of simple epigenetics, the environment to which we put our genes in, just simply making sure that our environments, are healthy, our internal environments, our physical environments, and unfortunately there's a war going on with our government or the governments existing in terms of keeping our food supply healthy, keeping our water healthy, keeping our air healthy, and I really just don't see that as a priority. I've been telling people to get off the food supply for so many years. So okay, so we look at that. Um, let's see. Okay, so then working in the gauntlet, having my practice, being in legislation, burnt out, just treating, dealing with all of the ineffectual challenges of COVID, where conventional doctors were not getting what they needed. There was so much gaslighting going on. There was so much corruption and bad public health practices. Because remember, I was like fresh in my brain. I had gone to school, started all this stuff, and then boom, we're hit with COVID. Did a lot of national public health education all around that, beyond just washing your hands. I know washing your hands is incredibly important, but there's other things that can be done, like vitamin C, I mean, every year I put out in my community, I give everybody their protocols in September, October. I go, okay, everybody who's been eating sugar, who's been eating dairy, who has not been following your protein, your macro plan, all those people who've been sneaking a little bit of this, start supporting your immune system, because it's going to be affected. So we're very proactive instead of reactive, and so that's important. So I had that practice for 15 years, and then eventually I transitioned. I just said enough's enough. I closed my practice, and it had kind of been happening because I had also been traveling the world quite a bit and working with different healers and indigenous healers all over the world. And so I really, every time I would leave and come back, it was like more difficult. And I had a lot of demand on me, just being on the plantation in Virginia. So I just said enough is enough. I've met the love of my life. I moved overseas, and so now pretty much I kind of semi-retired. I still see patients, but in a very different capacity. Opened a health remote a health tech company, pretty much health remote monitoring company. Opened up a media company. Opened up a couple different ventures. Really just to expand past the very broken healthcare system. I went back and got my MBA, so that's my last degree. I am still in my PhD program. I did complete a year in psychophys PhD, and then transitioned to international psych because I just saw a little bit different. So, but I'm taking my time. I don't need to rush to a PhD. I'll get it worked out. But I did complete my MBA, and my master's thesis on my MBA was really focused around the healthcare system, looking at the inefficiencies. So one of the things we learned with COVID was the lack of education. So patients were not receiving the appropriate education. Now that's a problem, especially now with this new upcoming administration who pretty much wants to put the healthcare system in a blackout. We're already seeing that in Georgia. where the numbers for post Wade were not good, and so as a response, instead of continuing on as we monitor this situation, they closed the particular committee. Same thing in Texas as well. They will no longer be reporting. We got one post Wade report back. I think it was up like 50% maternal mortality rate, and averages are around 11% in that particular, and more nationwide, I think, but definitely in that state. And so and as a response, it's a blackout again. And now with the advent of no more CDC, no more NIH, and I'm not saying no more, they're not going to completely dismantle, but now they're are prohibited to pass information and withdrawal from World Health Organization. So there's going to be, a blackout of information, and the doctors that are under the American Medical Association are going to be, pretty stuck between rocks and hard places, because if they go against their administration, or they go against, the hospital system that they work for, they can get in some big trouble. So they're not going to be able to really speak as candidly and as openly as I can, because they're under the system, and I really feel for them. But this is why really important to see what you're aligning yourself with. In the beginning, when I was a little girl and knew I was going to be a doctor, I read all of those, I read about Dr. Andrew Still. I read about, Rockefeller. I read about Louis Pasteur. I read about, all the other different people. My brain is going blank today. But, I read about a lot of these, how these professions started. And, in our profession, it was like neep water cure. And then they sent the guy over. And so, for me, it really, I just could not align myself, simply because of the coercive control. If you don't fall into alignment into that system, they will strike back at you. So even if the data doesn't come in their favor, I have lots of clippings from, in fact, Pfizer just paid out, I think, $60 million for coercing physicians to pretty much on a speaker tour to be able to push their products that were not working well. And they've been able now to advertise their low efficacy products to be able to generate financial gain and revenue off of. So a lot of really, just crazy things happening. So that it's going to be more and more important as time goes on for us to have quality public health education, so that we know and understand, what we need to do. Having appropriate public health education is critical in making informed decisions. So that's why I love remote patient monitoring. This is really where we're going to start. I'm going to really start you with basics, right? Just really three markers we're looking at. All we're looking at is your pH level, your urinary level, and so urinary, salivary, and your heart rate. That's it. Those are the only three things we're looking at. So, we're not throwing in pulse rate or any of that, we're not throwing in weight or inches or anything like that. So we're just looking at those metrics, and I begin to show you the relationship between your diet and your stress, right? So you begin to kind of see those patterns, which is kind of cool. Again, really the information starts to come to life, and it becomes really practical. So we also talk about, again, how we gain data from a subjective perspective, right? So even in the world of psychology, we still have ways to track how a person feels. There are very deep studies when you start to get into upper level psych, not bachelors in psychs, and I love y'all bachelors in psychs, but there is, I think sometimes when you speak about certain things in the psych world, it waters it down, because there is a heavy scientific community within the psych world, that there is not. We just want to be able to see the nuance and the texture of the human experience that your traditional, more physical sciences don't offer. And so it's not that there's not objective data in the social sciences. It's just that people don't understand how studies are conducted. They just cherry pick their little reference points that serve their confirmation bias, and then away we go. So it's kind of interesting, really, how people set that up. So Excuse me. I'm ready for my little afternoon nap now. Okay. So that completed my education. When I looked at my MBA, I looked at, again, it was a lack of education, right? That was driving a lot of fear. That, and then also just not enough really skilled providers. So the providers are getting hammered, right? And at the same time, this system was pretty much designed to be this way. So the undereducated, the ignorant, right, the highly reactive, all coming together with no progress being made. It's just constant hysteria, 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 endless hysteria. So we really had to kind of break free from that. And I wanted to solve some unique issues. So I wanted to naturally solve health access issues. So I wanted to decentralize it. Didn't want to be in that brick and mortar. So anybody around the world that had a cell phone signal could be able to access it, right? I wanted something that had robust education. So I spent a long time organizing education and preloading and pre-working a lot of education so that boom, people just have it ready to go. And when I talk about education, I'm talking about, hey, United States Navy, I'm talking about like decision making or personal growth and development or journaling or something where it gives you a daily or a weekly task to complete, right? So when we get into remote patient monitoring, we can get really granular in terms of how we track. We can alert you. We can really, because it's about classical conditioning. It's about shaping your behavior and shaping it in a positive way. And so a lot of times people come in and they've got tons of just unprocessed trauma, unprocessed wounds from the past. They have a lot of primitive mind fears that have not been processed and dealt with, a lot of irrationality, that limbic system and the amygdala is firing, that prefrontal cortex is not working. Thank you guys so much. And so because of that, they're in varying degrees of fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, and a lot of times detached from their own bodies, and it's just really not working. And so when people come in, into my practice, their minds are over here, their emotions are over here, and their bodies are over here. And so I have to get all of these back online because we have to have a thought then creates a feeling, which creates an action, a behavior, a habit, a lifestyle, etc., right? So no matter how much I guilt, shame, manipulate, judge, whatever, these patients, right? And I don't do that, but let's say I did, right? It's not going to get, hey, LA, it's not going to get any change to happen, right? So how I kind of came to understand this was because I figured out patients were lying to me. How did I know patients were lying to me? Because their lab numbers weren't changing. So remember, I have all this years in controlled laboratory understanding and hyper awareness, and I had to write hundreds of lab reports by hand. Right? You're gonna tell me after all these reports, you're the magical one? No. So, I began to question, and then I began to put forth more and more little, test, if you will, to be able to assess, okay, is this patient really getting well? Yes, I am. Is this patient really, getting well, or is this patient just, bouncing around, right? And then I'd have a control, right? So then every patient is going through this process. Oh, you're so sweet. I think you are too. So bringing back our practices, like, so anyway, yeah, so it's really just really challenging to figure out all the little things with the patients. And so I really started to do a lot of this work and put a lot of these things in place, really just to help a patient move out of that sense of denial and move them into a state of conscious awareness so that they can begin to make those changes. Now, naturally, I don't work as hard now, so if people are in denial, I leave them in denial. But back in the day, I was like trying to drag dead bodies out from the but because I had unhealed, right? Rescuer wound, helper wound, that's all part of that victim consciousness. So, again, as I've gone through the evolution as a holistic doctor myself, a physician heal thyself, I've seen a lot of these behaviors within myself, right? So, because these thoughts and these emotions are not unique, right? We're all pretty much regurgitating the same nonsense again and again and again. And so, it's fascinating to me because as I'm, creating this container of healing, inevitably these things, really show themselves to be true. So, interestingly enough, let me grab a drink of water really quick. I've been talking for a while. All right. So, that's that. So now you kind of understand my education background. I don't think I'm missing anything out that was like, I mean, I did my, gross training in Florida. I did methyl genetic training. I think I went over my methyl genetic training. So I've done a lot of stuff, right, in my field. So I believe in a structured therapeutic order, right? And so what that means is a therapeutic order is how we create a clinical space, right? And that therapeutic order in my field is the least invasive to the most invasive. So again, because that's how we're trained. So we have a lot of, I'll say opportunists, a lot of people that are interested in, metaphysics or, health coaching or whatever. And so they will get out there and they will start professing things, right, that really aren't that, right? Because again, you have to have data. We don't guess, we test. Okay, so just throwing things out flippantly is actually very dangerous to people. Now there are certain things I think you can kind of extrapolate. Most people are going to have magnesium deficiencies as a for instance, right? But there's other really deeply nuanced things biochemically that you absolutely have to have the data to be able to organize it. So we have systems in place that we've built to really be able to harness the data, to be able to be educated, to be able to know what the data means, but more importantly, to teach you objectively what the data means so that you can make a decision that works for you. It's not our job as healthcare professionals to make any sort of healthcare decisions for you. It's really your job to decide what's going to work best for you, right? In all capacity. So our job is to objectively give you all of the information. We're supposed to give you what we've come up with on the subjective side as well as the objective side, our proposed treatment plan, and then the treatment options, even if they include treatment options that are alternative to them. So that's proper informed consent. Naturally, we're not getting proper informed consent. We're getting a coercive control, in my opinion. So that's the current state of our healthcare system. I really don't see it getting better. I left that kind of traditional model in 2023 and moved online and moving more into a teaching capacity and just more leveraging my knowledge and experience, because at this point I did everything that I wanted to do in this field with human beings. I worked with end of life cases, I worked with babies, I worked with getting babies born and fertility, all digestive disorders, neurological disorders, psych disorders, you name it, cardiovascular risk factors, end of life cases, all sorts of things, right? And so I was able, autoimmune cancer, all the rheumatology, all the things. So at this point, I'm good, right? So it's more of like there needs to be more people like me in the world, so I can pass the torch on to and educate people, more so about what they can do proactively. So there's really two sets. There's those people that, hey, 100 packs. It's those people that we're wanting to educate them to be more empowered and take on their lifestyle, and we have a container for that. And then also the other piece of it is, to really keep people, in community, but educated and help them to really understand and be more empowered, right? So with our remote patient monitoring, we can actually set up an entire triage in your home, right? So you wouldn't even have to leave, etc. And it sets up everything, it monitors everything through our app. We then get, whatever degree reporting that we want. So if we want daily reporting, weekly reporting, etc., some of it will do it even through Bluetooth as well. So again, that triage, right? Yeah, so in terms of nurses trying to leave, I love working with nurses. So I've worked with nurses, medical doctors, osteopaths, pharmacists as well in their transition. So the biggest challenge with coming in from a conventional practice is you're trained in the conventional model, right? So you're trained to look at the body in parts and diagnose those parts and manage those parts. So it's a highly reactive system. So it's really about shifting into more of BChamp, which is not germ theory. BChamp is more terrain theory. So we want to look at the terrain of the body, and we want to improve the function of the terrain because then the environment isn't as susceptible to disease process. So it's the distinction between Louis Pasteur's germ theory, highly reactive, conventional medical based, and BChamp's more terrain theory that we operate still within today. So and it was dressed up even more with epigenetics and all, in Dr. Bruce Lipton's work. So it definitely takes some time. It's not a fast transition. I definitely think, working with natural providers helps, but it's not the only thing, because there's a lot of really badly trained natural providers out there, or not trained at all. There's some that don't have any education in schooling and are hanging their shingle out and are recommending supplements and all kinds. I mean, I see it all day. I see it on this app all the time, and it's sad because it cheapens our profession and it makes it look like what we do is easy when it's really not. You'll see, it's actually pretty challenging. So, because we're connecting how a person's feeling with actually pinpointing what the cause is. Like everybody's like, oh, root cause, right? Well, when you're actually a root cause doctor, number one, you have to be really comfortable with being wrong, right? Because you're wrong most of the time. You have to be really comfortable with always guessing, right? You have to be really comfortable with dealing in high pressure, high stress situations. You have to be really emotionally intelligent, right? Because they're used to getting it they're used to being dismissed from a conventional doctor, right? So coming to me, I definitely have to walk the tightrope because I don't want to create more trauma, right? But at the same time, I have to set boundaries as a professional. So it's all pretty wild. Yeah, yeah, he's only 5. Yeah, I've treated so many, little kiddo families, family systems, all sorts of things. Yeah. And I get called a lot as a specialist for different companies and stuff like that when they need, expert guidance. But unfortunately, our business is moving into such a cash situation right now. I'm like one of the last OGs trying to keep our moral compass alive in our profession. But I just don't. There's a few of us. We're few and we're proud who, want to hold on to our dignity and our self-respect, but not too many at this point. And mostly just because Republicans backed our bills most of the time. We didn't get any traction with the Democrats ever. Not that I'm going to turn this into a political conversation, but yeah, it's crazy. All right, so, oh my gosh, I'm so sleepy. I'm ready for a nap. I was up way late, and I still have to record my podcast. I was up late recording that video, and then I was gonna record my podcast, and I was like, what the hell, Erica? Go to bed. Just get some sleep. Deal with it in the morning. Yeah, please do. Yes, share, subscribe. Definitely my last video that I posted. If you could share that would be great. Also, join my free community. It's off of all of these platforms. It's a HIPAA compliant community, so that I can disseminate content and all that. I also have a Discord as well. My Discord will feed lots of automatic content on as well. Again, I've got content for days. So, tons of I have more stuff that I haven't posted than stuff that I do on all different kinds of topics. So, and I have all kinds of different, I have free 99. I have low cost, like less than $100. I've got 100 to 500, and then upwards from there. So also, just in terms of access, in terms of treatment methodology and approach, I really like a decentralized system because patients can come as close or as far as they're really willing to come, right? Like patients that want to text me, cool, here's my clinical number, right? Patients that want a phone call, okay, cool, we can schedule that, right? So there's a lot to it, but again, I'm really very cognizant of the fact of what it takes for patients to come to me. There's so many stories that I've had where patients literally, they've been like, it's taken me 2 years to pick up the phone and call you, right? And so by the time they get to me, it's a very delicate balance. I have to be really honoring and really just hold that space for them because it's taken so much to trust again after, again, institutional trauma, betrayal trauma. I did write, I'm a columnist for Psychology Today, so I did write a article about that concept, and I just wrote an article just yesterday about superiority and confirmation bias, so definitely check that out and share it. So if there's no other questions, I think I'm going to jump off. I know I want to go over the syllabus, but I think I'm going to just take a little cat nap. I'm going to figure out how to fix my images, and I'll come on later and we'll talk about the syllabus. This is more of like intro, so you can kind of understand, holistic medicine, we use all those modalities. We use supplements, we use herbs, we use breath work, we use pretty much any tool we got in our bag, but we have to know how the tool is working. So we need to get baseline data, and then we need to monitor that data under certain intervals, collect that data, and then create decisions based off of that. And so we've got to get our mindset more into a scientific mindset and more of a researcher mindset, more of like a I'm Dr. House mindset, and not like, where's my baby Ben's kind of mindset. Like healthcare is, although, it's important to, financially prosper for yourself and support yourself. I know I've been criticized so much for leaving the healthcare system. But in reality, the healthcare system doesn't care about you or me. And I just couldn't keep working for free. So I created systems that made it really affordable and really structured. I mean, consultations only $100. I give you actionable things you can do right then. That's what I'm talking about. It's not about gatekeeping, but it is about having an even healthy exchange for something of value and worth. So, all right, cool. I think I'm going to jump off for now, and then I'm going to come on later. Yeah, exactly. Well, my course, I'll get into it. Let me give you a little teaser for my course, and I'll be back later to talk about it. So definitely hit my bell, like, share, subscribe. Thank you guys so much for hitting my goal. So we start in terms of so it's a 12-week course. Every single week there's 2 lectures. You don't have to be there live to watch them. They're recorded. They will be posted in our course shell. So I already have course shell and all that stuff. I'm just building out the web page, and so it'll link in there. So my stuff's already done because I'm already in this space, and so I really, and banging out syllabuses and all that are super easy. So anywho, so it's a 12-week course really focused around, again, subjective and each objective. So how do I feel? How do I measure that versus how do I feel and how do I measure that? And then what actions I need to take. So part of the 12-week cycles that's actually helpful for your neurological system to kind of settle into that. So that's how we came up with 12 weeks. So we work through different components, plus 2, that's an average semester. So every single week we're working a different concept. You're doing a light discussion thread. So you're going to do 1 initial and then 2 just additionals as you're replying. And that's to keep the conversation going, and that's to keep the communication going. There is a little bit of reading. It's not going to be super reading heavy. Again, there's no extra books or anything, but there is that technology fee of $39. And that covers all your lectures and your handouts and all the things, your remote patient tracking tool and all that. So instead of doing that, that's how we do it. So it's really about creating and building efficiency. That's the name of the game. So, all right. So it is almost 1 o'clock here. It's probably 12 Eastern Standard Time. I'm probably going to be back on this afternoon. I'm going to just relax and take a little nappy nap. 12-week, it is graded. You get a certificate at the end. Every single week we focus on something else. Meaning, like, first week we'll focus maybe on the theory. I have it all listed. So when I come back later, we'll go over the syllabus. We'll break it all down. So you'll have all of that information. And then from there, you can decide if that's going to work for you, because we have to put structure in place. That's critical. And making sure that public health education, especially, we're about to go on a healthcare information blackout. So making sure that people understand their own health data and understand what to practically do with their health data, because it does us no good if you've got these numbers and you don't know what to do, or you're being advised improperly. So, all right, guys, I'm going to take a nap. I'm getting delirious, and I